Report Story. Chapter 5. Ochako woke up with a new mindset. She was tired of tiptoeing around her emotions, and she was tired of Izuku doing the same. Ochako got out of her bed with energy, throwing on a set of workout clothes. Ochako was tired of getting embarrassed whenever Izuku said something cute, or at one of her friends' mention of her crush. Crush. Originally, that embarrassment had been there because she hadn't been sure Izuku reciprocated her feelings. Now, she knew the truth. She liked him, and he liked her back. Ochako had waited a few days for Izuku to start to do something, and she was tired of waiting. On this early morning before her workout session with Izuku, she made herself a promise. If Izuku wasn't going to do something, she was going to take matters into her own hands. Dash dot. Izuku woke up early, as was normal for him. He threw on his track suit and gloves, getting out of her room relatively quickly. Uraraka was waiting at the exit to the dorm room, as was normal. Good morning, Deku, she greeted with a smile. Did you sleep well? Izuku nodded eagerly. As good as I can. I don't even need to ask how you slept. You didn't even come to dinner. He teased as they walked to the beach. Uraraka scratched the back of her neck. Hey, yeah, turns out I ended up sleeping for 14 hours, and that's even with waking up early to meet you here. She said, at least it means that I'm full of energy for the fight today. They walked for another few moments in silence, before Izuku spoke up. Can I talk about our match today? He asked sheepishly. Uraraka gave him an odd look. I don't see why not. Why? Well, you kind of hit me for talking about it yesterday. He muttered. Miraculously, Uraraka burst out laughing. That's because we hadn't even finished our first match yet, dummy. We can talk about today's match all we want. She punched him lightly on the shoulder. Okay then. I'm actually kind of worried about the match today. He admitted. Uraraka looked him in the eyes with a blank expression. Where's your usual confidence, Deku? She asked, stepping over a crack in the concrete. Well, he started. While Kaminari and Sue might not have much in terms of combos they can do, there's one problem. Both of our quirks require us to get in close proximity, but anytime we try to get close, we'll just get fried by Kaminari. Kaminari. He scratched his chin. I see what you mean. Couldn't you blast them out of the ring with your wind attacks? He shook his head. Without the gauntlets to help direct the energy, it's too sporadic and spread out to knock someone far enough. My attacks aren't powerful enough yet to do that, especially against an opponent that braces themselves. He explained. Uraraka hummed in thought. Could we make him use enough that he goes? Uraraka giggled, giving a thumbs up. Wait, Izuku looked at Uraraka trying to make her face as flat as possible. imitating Kaminari when he went over his limit. It was hilarious. Ha ha, Uraraka. He cut himself off, not able to contain the laughter anymore. He had to stop walking to compose himself again. When he was finally able to move again, there was a smile plastered on his face. Anyways, he panted. I don't think that would work because I don't know how we could get him to use his electricity on a whim like that. Plus, he wouldn't just go and use all of it. He saw how that backfired that one time. He shook his head. Head. His head. Promoted stories. You'll also like. Not all heroes wear capes. Some just have 8.43.1k 1.4 kilo. Everybody. This is a suicidal, depressed Deku book with Dadmic. Will their bond grow? Will Mike fuck up? Will Izuku try to kill himself? Find out yourself. Number 1 radio. Finished. 28.6k 508 tilde he save all of them just a smile plastered on his face before disappearing through the wind. Hurt cuz I love you to death Izuocha. Ha. 0.8.9k 141 Class 1A is now Class 2A and is working to be better heroes due to events that had happened before. Deku has gotten strong feelings toward Uraraka during the summer as Mirko X Shy Male Reader 175k 1.1 Key. Don't own MHA. I hope you enjoy the story I made. Feelings. Aizawa. X Reader 57.3k 1.3k RE posting. This until I edited, sorry if it's not good, it's my first time writing a story. You enroll at UA and you have multiple quirks you are really good at using. Why? Free. Oni Shots 150k3k. This is a collections of free X readers. Requests on this are now closed. The Kings and Queen Yandere Wakfu X reader 59k 1.8 Kyonder. Wakfu X reader. Images do not belong to me unless stated. Wakfu does not belong to me, it belongs to Enigma. This is being rewritten in another book on my profile. We could always try that one thing we were working on. Uraraka muttered. Izuku looked over. But that's not ready yet. Plus, I thought we said we were going to wait on using it for as long as possible. He protested. This might be our last chance to use it. Uraraka retorted. If we lose here, there isn't anywhere else to use it. Izuku breathed out carefully. I'll try to think of something. We can do that if it comes down to the last straw. He gave her a thumbs up just then. They arrived at the beach. They both set down their small backpacks and water bottles. I'll think something up while I run. Meet you at the other side. He asked. Lately, he had been running at his own pace, letting Uraraka push herself, but not hold him back. Sure, she said. Both of them set off at a jog. Obviously, Izuku was significantly faster than Uraraka. Izuku was lost in thought, thinking of ideas and strategies for their match later that day. Yet, everything that came to mind, he shot down. Blind them. No, that wouldn't work. He dust could work as a conductor, or a way for Sue to camouflage. Shoot style. No, it's still too predictable and I'm not great with it yet. The new thing. No, it's not ready yet. Izuku switched directions, running back along the beach. Then, an idea came to mind. I could go 20%. The thought nearly scared Izuku. He hadn't gone full 20% since the hideout raid. Back then, he was able to go 20% for a few precious minutes, giving him the strength needed to hold his own against the ridiculous power that was Chisaki. A few minutes of that power had hurt, but not damaged him. Izuku ran across the beach, weighing the positives and negatives of just going full 20%. In 20% mode, he was faster than Iida was without his special move, stronger than Shoji, and as dangerous as Bakugo in terms of destructive power. He kept running, and passed by Uraraka on her way to the other end of the beach. She smiled at him as he passed her by. Another thing. I haven't even ever shown 20% to anyone except those in the raid. And even so, not everyone saw me. It would be my first reveal. Izuku growled softly under his breath. It was a hard decision. He made it back to the other end of the beach much faster than he had anticipated. Anticipated. He looked down and saw the crackling green energy of One for All in his legs. He switched it off. I must have activated it accidentally. He thought. He started running back the other direction. He passed Uraraka again, who this time waved. There's something else. Izuku realized this is a team event. I can't go out and win this match on my own. The point is to cooperate with others. Not go off alone. He shook his head. 20% was out of the picture. Izuku ran back and forth on the beach, stumped. When he finally finished his 8 miles, Uraraka was already sitting on the concrete step, water bottle in hand. Izuku jogged over. How was it? He asked. It's getting better. I don't feel like dying after 4 miles anymore, so I guess that's progress. She said. She pat the sidewalk step next to her. Want to sit down? Izuku nodded, walking over and sitting on the step. Izuku grabbed his water bottle and drained a third of it in one go. You know, Uraraka started as the sun peeked over the ocean. Even if I wasn't focused on becoming better, I would still come in the mornings. Just for this. The sunrise. Izuku took another swig of water. His bottle was half empty now, that in being able to sit here with you. It's quite relaxing. As if to prove her point, she placed her hands behind her and leaned back. back, Izuku couldn't help but blush. Why does being with me have to do with it? He asked nervously. Uraraka looked over at him, odd expression on her face. It's relaxing to be around you. You're my best friend, Deku. How could it be worse with you here? If it's not worse, it's better. That's the wisest thing put in the simplest terms. Izuku laughed. He set down his water bottle next to him. Uraraka looked over at it. I ran out of water. Can I have a drink of yours? Yours, she asked. Huh, oh water. Yeah, sure. Izuku seemed lost in thought. A soft blush plastered on his face. Uraraka tipped her head back, taking a drink from the bottle. Izuku didn't know what came over him. Maybe he was feeling ballsy. Maybe he was feeling stupid. But the next words that came out of his mouth next surprised him. You know, they call that second-hand kissing. He regretted it as soon as he said it. Uraraka froze, slowly looking over at Izuku. His face was as red as a tomato. Huh, never heard of that before, she said simply. Her face flushed slightly, but not to the extent of Izuku's. It's because, Izuku started. I get why, she said with a giggle, setting down the water bottle between them. Then she leaned over close to Izuku. Izuku's face felt the kiss on his cheek before his mind registered it. Uraraka came away, her face red. If the water bottle was a second-hand kiss, consider that a hand and a half kiss. Somewhere between that and a real one. Izuku was still frozen in shock. Izuku was blushing profusely. Did Uraraka just? Izuku was in denial. She giggled. Hee hee. You're cute when you're flustered. She said, standing up. Come on, let's go practice. Izuku shot up off the ground in an instant. Why yeah let's. He stuttered out. He was still completely shell-shocked. Shocked, Uraraka turned around and started to walk towards the practice field. It took Izuku a moment to notice, but he eventually did, and he followed her. Ochako was proud of herself. Not only did she swallow her nervousness and make a move, but it had worked. To her own surprise, she hadn't blushed profusely until after she turned around. At that point, her face had lit up like a Christmas tree. Not only did she feel good for finally doing something, but she also felt like she was floating on air. She had kissed Izuku, albeit on the cheek, but nevertheless. Ochako hoped that her flirtatious actions inspired Izuku to do something in return. Izuku and Uraraka walked away from the practice field sweating. We have about an hour until we have to go to the stadium for the matches. Izuku said. Just enough time to freshen up. Yeah, you stink, Uraraka hummed. Izuku scoffed. Like you're any better. Izuku protested. I'm so much better. She turned and winked at him. 'Cause I'm a girl. What's with her mood this morning? She's so. Izuku blushed as he realized what Uraraka had been trying to do all day. She's flirting with me, Izuku realized with a start. He couldn't stop himself from blushing, once again. At this rate, his face was going to be permanently red. Izuku continued walking back to the forms with Uraraka, making meaningless small talk. They might ban us from using the field eventually. Uraraka noted. Why? Izuku was confused as to why they would be denied a place to practice. Because every time we use the field, it's utterly destroyed by the end of it. She pointed to the distant dirt field. Izuku scratched the back of his head. It's not like we can help it. He muttered. Uraraka just shrugged and kept walking. Uraraka left Izuku in silence, which naturally meant his thoughts drifted. Uraraka's flirting with me, my best friend is flirting with me, he realized. He scolded himself for not realizing earlier. While he didn't enjoy getting constantly flustered, he liked her flirting with him. Really liked it, in fact. Suddenly, a thought fought its way into Izuku's mind. The least I can do is return the favor. The thought was in his mind before he even noticed it was there. Izuku panicked. What if she doesn't want me to? I've never done that before. What if I mess it up and make everything awkward? Izuku shook his head, forcing the thoughts away. Izuku opened the dorm building door for Uraraka, and they continued to the staircase. Grow a pair. His classmates' words echoed in his mind. Everything fine, Deku. Uraraka seemed to notice the frown on his face as he was thinking. Izuku looked up. They were almost to his floor. Now or never. The only thing that's fine here is you. Izuku winked. Oh god, why did I wink? Izuku scolded himself. Uraraka just looked at him for a moment, before her face turned beet red. Steam looked like it was coming out of her ears. For some reason, Izuku's face didn't feel very hot. It was like being confident and headstrong made his worries go away. Izuku remembered something from the beach that morning. Just as he parted ways with Uraraka, he looked her in the eyes and said, "You look cute when you're flustered." Time came around to go to the stadium, and when Ochako and Izuku met up with their friends to head to the stadium, it felt like the awkward flirting from earlier had never happened. Which was good, because if Ochako had been constantly thinking about that, then she would have been permanently pink. Iida, Ochako and Izuku walked in tandem up the staircase to the stands where they were going to watch the first match. Tokiyami and Todoroki versus Jiro and Aoyama. Maybe they've figured out something to be able to fight against Todoroki's ice wall. Iida said, hopeful. Ochako could tell by the tone of his voice that he was nervous about his match. I've been wondering that as well. Aoyama's quirk can be powerful, but it has serious drawbacks and lacks sustainability. Izuku said, analytic as always. Ochako stayed silent. They made it to their usual spots in the stands, to find that some of their classmates were already present, waiting for the match to start. Hey everyone, Iida said cheerfully. Some of their classmates inclined their heads in acknowledgement. Seems everyone is eager to see the matchups today. Ochako thought, sitting down next to Izuku, as per usual. As soon as he was in his seat, Izuku pulled out a notebook and flipped to an empty page. It's time for the second day of matches. Are you ready? Present Mike yelled into the Coliseum. Ochako winced at the loud roar that resounded through the area. Enter the contestants. From one side, Todoroki and Tokiyami walked up to the playing field, calm as ever. On the other side, Jiro and Aoyama walked up. At least they don't look as intimidated as Kota and Sato. Iida noted. At closer inspection, Ochako could see what he was talking about. Jiro walked with her usual, uncaring strut, and Aoyama walked on with a massive smile on his face, like nothing in the world could hurt him. Contestants ready, start. Present Mike yelled. Ochako held her breath as Todoroki took a step forwards, ice collecting at his feet. It crept towards Jiro and Aoyama, gaining speed and size. Don't let him just roll over you again. Ochako silently pleaded. Jiro's earphone jacks shot down, attaching to her legs. A blast of sound erupted from her. It wasn't enough to stop the ice barreling towards them, however. Ochako sucked in more air. Aoyama now. Jiro yelled. Aoyama smiled. He put his hands behind his head, and a blue beam shot from his navel. The beam didn't shoot towards the ice block, however. As the beam came out of his stomach, it shot straight into the distortion that Jiro was making. As the beam went into the solid sound, it went wild. Wild. The normally thin blue beam zigzagged all over the place. It looked like the yellow wave that came out of Present Mike's mouth when he used his quirk. The blue onslaught tore into the massive ice block just before it reached Aoyama and Jiro, tearing it to pieces. Yeah, Ochako couldn't help but cheer at seeing someone other than Izuku and Bakugo take out Todoroki's massive attack. The two teams sat, looking at each other once again. They're kind of at a stalemate right now. Izuku spoke up. Ochako looked over at him. What do you mean? She asked. Well, Jiro and Aoyama can't risk going on the offensive, because the other two are by far more powerful. They can destroy anything that Todoroki sends their way, sure, but they can't do anything else, either. Izuku explained. As he talked, Iida nodded. And Todoroki and Tokiyami can't exactly get close. Jiro can just push them back. Iida said. Ah, I see. So are they going to just sit there? There, Ochako asked. Izuku shook his head. If there's one thing I've learned about Todoroki, it's that he always has another trick up his sleeve. As if on cue, Todoroki took another step with his right foot. Ice collected around him. Are they just going to try again? Iida said, pointing to the field. The ice kept collecting, not going anywhere. Oh, that's risky. Izuku spoke up. He pointed his pencil down at the field, where Todoroki was just letting the ice accumulate. What? Ochako was cut off when there was an explosion of blue ice on the field. This time, however, instead of shooting towards their competition, it went up. Up straight up the ice rose towards the roof of the Colosseum, where the glass opened up to the sky. Then the entire place was shut into darkness. Wah! Iida looked around. Do you remember what Tokiyami said about his weakness? Izuku asked his friends that he could now vaguely see. Ochako's eyes went wide as she everything clicked. Dark shadow is weak to light. Two yellow slits popped open down at the field. Ochako looked carefully, eyes still adjusting to the newfound darkness. She saw dark shadow mold itself to Tokiyami's body, and it was not small. The form added about 5 feet to his height. Tokiyami took a step forwards, before breaking into a sprint. He ran straight at Jiro and Aoyama. Aoyama tried to shoot a beam at his enemy, but Tokiyami slapped it away like it was a fly. Tokiyami whipped his arm around, massive claw raking the ground and making the building shake. Aoyama shot out from the hit, flying out of bounds and into a wall. Jiro barely dodged, jumping to the side, using the force of her heartbeat to launch herself out of the way. She sailed through the air, retracting the ear jacks from her legs, before whipping them out, where they wrapped around Tokiyami's leg. She grabbed onto the cord, pulling as hard as she could, causing Tokiyami to fall to one knee. The massive beast looked up, and Ochako swore she could see a hint of amusement on his face. He grabbed the earphone jack around his leg, and yanked on it. Jiro went sailing off the ground, flying straight towards Tokiyami, where she was met with a forceful punch. When the dust cleared, Jiro was unconscious on the ground. That's match. Present Mike called out to the crowd as Todoroki melted the massive cover over the stadium, allowing light back into the field. That was something. Ochako said. Everyone credited Todoroki with being the most powerful person in the class, but what Tokiyami just did was impressive. It was risky, but it paid off. The one problem is that Dark Shadow could have gone crazy just like during the summer. Looks like Tokiyami has more control than before. Izuku muttered. Although Ochako was trying to focus on her match she had ahead of her, she couldn't help but feel anxious. If Izuku and her got far enough, they would have to go against that. Ochako looked over at Izuku, who was furiously scribbling in his notebook. Ochako sighed. Let's see how the next match goes. Ochako said with a sigh. Shoji and Mineta came out on one side, and Mina and Kirishima came out on the other. Kirishima and Mina are good friends. They work well together, Ochako noted. Not unlike yourself and Midoriya. Iida noted. Ochako blushed slightly. I guess so. You're right. He is my best friend after all. Ida's face flashed with something Ochako didn't recognize. Only then did she realize the implications of what she had said. And not that you aren't also my best friend. I. Ochako blushed in embarrassment, unable to form a sentence. I know. It's quite all right, Uraraka. Iida said. Still blushing, Ochako looked down slightly. Izuku looked up from his notebook for a moment, and saw how red Ochako was. Then he smiled and winked before looking back down at his book. The implications were obvious. You're cute when you're flustered. Izuku's words echoed in Ochako's mind, and she buried her face in her hands, wanting to die. Ochako was still as red as a chili pepper when the next match started. Frankly, Shoji and Mineta didn't really have a chance. Their entire strategy was based on Mineta hiding in Shoji's arms, like he did at the sports festival. Ochako assumed that his plan was to get Mina and Kirishima immobile with his balls. It all fell apart for them when Mina shot acid at every ball Mineta threw out, dissolving them midair. She skated towards the other two, Kirishima following in a run behind. Mina slid under a jab from Shoji, spraying acid on his leg. Shoji fell to his knees wincing from pain as his skin started to dissolve. Kirishima grabbed Shoji's right side, throwing him out of bounds similar to how Izuku did in the sports festival to Shinso. The match ended with Mineta running out of bounds yelling, "I submit." As soon as the match was over, Izuku stood up. He looked over to Ochako, giving her a big smile. "Ready?" he asked. "Yup, let's go win," she said happily. Happily. Whenever she was around Izuku, her fears and anxieties seemed to dissipate. It was a feeling she could get used to. Chapter 6. Izuku and Uraraka sat in the preparation room, but unlike last time, it was lively. No way. Uraraka was barely containing her laughter. Yes way. Mina and Kirishima, sitting in the post-match room, kissing. Saw it with my own two eyes. Izuku pointed to his own pupils as if it made his own argument more valid. I so totally need to talk to Mina after this, then. Uraraka said, she's getting a mouthful. Maybe I can. She trailed off. Can what? And why do you need to talk to her? Izuku said, confused. Uraraka's face flushed slightly. No reason. She said. There was a knock on the door. It's match time. Izuku looked into Uraraka's eyes, and saw nothing but determination. Let's go. She hopped up from her seat and strode out the door. Izuku followed suit. Izuku was walking up the steps to the playing field once more, and couldn't help but feel giddy. He and Uraraka had scraped out a win in the first round, but this one was going to be harder even than that one. 1. He peeked the slope and met Kirishima's eyes across the way. Uraraka walked up next to him, and it made Izuku ever so slightly more confident. Being around her did that, he noticed. Are the contestants ready? Present Mike yelled over the crowd. Nodded. Ready. Start. The match began just as Izuku thought it would. Kaminari and Sue waiting for Izuku and Ochako to push them. Remember, they don't have much in terms of synergies, but don't try to push them alone. Izuku muttered under his breath. Both sides sat, waiting for the other to make a move. We could do the thing. Uraraka suggested. The thing isn't ready. Izuku protested. The thing might be the only thing that works. Uraraka retorted. Izuku grinded his teeth together, trying to come up with something. His mind went back to the options he came up with that morning. Shoot style. No, I have to get close. 20% is out of the picture. Dust cloud. Then the idea came to mind. Uraraka, we need to make a dust cloud again. He muttered. Uraraka just gave him a weird look, but seemed to trust his judgment. She kneeled down, pressing her hand to the ground. Izuku activated one for all 8% and rapidly moved his leg, shooting up dust just like before. Another dust cloud. What possibly could they have in mind? Present Mike yelled. As soon as all the dust was in the air obscuring everything, Izuku stopped. Now I have to. Izuku was cut off as rapid movement pushed through the dust cloud. Cloud. Sue jumped straight through as Izuku was blinded. She moved too fast for Izuku to react. Izuku called 20% to his finger, flicking the dust cloud at Kaminari to blind him, but it was too late. Sue already had her tongue around Uraraka, throwing her out of bounds. Damn, Izuku jumped out of the way just in time. Uraraka is out of bounds. Midnight called. Damn, damn, damn. Izuku cursed under his breath. On the other side of the field, Kaminari was smirking. Now you're alone. What are you going to do now, broccoli boy? He was walking forward slowly, and Sue was standing off to his right. Izuku was nearly backed into the corn and had nowhere to go. If I go at Kaminari, he will just hit me before I can get to him, and then it's over. Sue can jump out of the way. Izuku shook his head, out of options. I believe in you, Deku. Uraraka said from out of bounds. Remember, Deku means never give up. Never give up. Izuku steeled himself. Uraraka was backing him up. He couldn't fail now, he wouldn't let himself. How do I get close enough, fast enough? Can I go that way and then? Izuku started muttering to himself, coming up with ideas as fast as possible. Talking to yourself again. Kaminari let off a shock that struck the ground next to Izuku. He kicked the ground next to him idly. The idea came to Izuku's mind. It was risky, but he had already seen a risky maneuver earlier that day, when Tokiyami went on a rampage with Dark Shadow. I don't have to worry about including Uraraka anymore. Izuku told himself, that means there's nothing holding me back. Kaminari and Sue were closing in from Izuku's private sessions with All Might. Izuku found that he could only go 20% for about 30 seconds before things started to break inside him. Guess I gotta make those 30 seconds count then. Izuku told himself. The other two were closing in. Midoriya is crammed into a corner. What will he do? The odds are stacked against him. Present Mike called out. Kaminari and Sue were about 10 feet out now. Come on. A little closer. Izuku said under his breath. What's that I hear? Nervous muttering. Kaminari teased. Izuku activated one for all 8%, filling up his body with power. Think you can fight 2-on-1, huh? Kaminari was the king of trash talk. We've seen how fast you are, Midoriya. No matter how fast you think you are, you're not fast enough to dodge lightning. Give it up. But this isn't as fast as he could go. Go it wasn't even half as fast as he could go as how fast he needed to go for Uraraka. He told himself, stealing against the daunting task ahead of him. Izuku had gotten used to letting through a leak of what sat behind the gate of power. Now, however, he would be opening the floodgates. He waited, just for the right moment. Kaminari took another step. What are you going to? Izuku opened the torrent of power, letting it wash over him. One for all, he called out. 20%. Izuku could feel his joints straining. The power not only enhanced his physical speed and strength, but it also increased his brain's processing speed. Time seemed to slow, ever so slightly, around him. All it took was a single kick off the ground to close the distance between him and Suyu. A blast of wind pressure was left in his wake, as the air molecules rushed to replace the air he had displaced. Izuku saw the scared look in Sue's eyes as he grabbed her arm. Whipping around, Izuku threw her with all the power he had. Sue went flying out of the ring, straight into the wall. Izuku turned to Kaminari, who was now staring at Izuku, a mix of fear and determination in his eyes. No time to waste. Izuku dashed towards the yellow-haired boy. As Izuku closed in, Kaminari raised his hand as if he was going to unleash a shock, so Izuku kicked off the ground, dodging to the right. He took off at a full-speed sprint, crossing the distance between him and Kaminari in an instant. This is for Uraraka, he said. He grabbed Kaminari's arm, and threw him into the air as hard as he could. The combination of wind pressure and the force of the throw sent Kaminari at least 100 feet into the air. Izuku kicked off the ground, getting to the height that Kaminari had sailed to, smile plastered on his face. Izuku grabbed the boy's leg. Manchester. Whirling Kaminari's body around like a ragdoll. Smash. Izuku circled through Kaminari straight into the ground with all the force he could, putting a little extra energy into the throw. Kaminari went flying to the ground below, where he struck the ground with a cloud of dust. Izuku fell to the ground, aiming a finger blast below him to stop his fall, before deactivating one for all. All Kaminari was laying in a crater in the middle of the arena. It wasn't the type of crater that Yaoyorozu was in, either. It was the size of the white circle in the center. Izuku kind of felt bad, but also didn't, considering the amount of trash talk he had been saying. Recovery Girl's little helpers came in and took Kaminari out on a stretcher. Ochako was sitting in the post-match waiting room when Izuku opened the door, peeking his face into the room. Deku. She shot up from her seat, rushing over to the door. That was amazing. She threw her arms around him, pulling him into a tight hug. Ah, hey, Uraraka, Izuku yelped slightly in surprise before Ochako pulled away. You did so great, taking them both on in a 1 versus 2 like that. Ochako couldn't help but squeak a little bit with joy. Izuku chuckled, scratching the back of his neck. The only reason I had to do that is because I was too stupid to see what they were waiting for. Izuku walked into the room, throwing his weight into a chair. Ochako tilted her head at him. What do you mean? She asked. If I had been paying attention, I would have realized that they were waiting for us to blind ourselves to make a move. Izuku ran his hand through his hair. Ochako's breath caught in her throat. She hated seeing Izuku like this. When he would get down on himself, and blame himself for every little thing that went wrong. It wasn't like him. Hey, stop that, she said sternly, sitting down in the chair next to Izuku. He looked over, concern in his eyes. What do you? He started. You're blaming yourself for everything that went wrong. Any friendliness that was normally in her voice was gone. It's bad we won, and that's what matters. She put a sense of finality in her tone. But it's meant to be a doubles exercise. I ruined that for us. He protested. And you still won. On your own. Sure. You didn't see through their plan. Neither did I. It's not all your fault. Ochako could feel herself coming apart at the seams. Uraraka, Izuku muttered. The Deku I know wouldn't get down on himself for something like this. He would be confident and keep going. Her voice was thick with emotion. Izuku stayed silent, so Ochako continued. We may have made a mistake, but they made a worse one. They underestimated you. Ochako met his eyes. You're so inspiring when you're determined. I saw it in your face. You wanted to win, and you wouldn't take no for an answer. But Izuku was cut off once again. You came out on top. You beat both of them, when all odds were stacked against you. Ochako's voice softened. I wish I could be like that. There was a period of silence. You were like that, Izuku said softly. What? Ochako couldn't believe her ears. I said you were like that. You never give up. You inspire those around you, Uraraka. Izuku looked into her eyes. The reason I won there, the reason I kept fighting, is because I had you backing me up. I felt your support as if it were a physical force pushing me to do better. I knew that I couldn't let you down. He said. His words shocked Ochako to her core. All this time, she had been inspired by Izuku, letting him be her inspiration. To hear that he felt the same about her. Thank you, Ochako, Izuku said. Ochako was shocked at his use of her first name. Izuku stood, walking over to Ochako, and pulled her into a hug. Shell shocked. It took a moment for Ochako to return the embrace, but when she did, she pulled her arms around Izuku, tight. You are my hero, she said into his ear. She could feel tears threatening the corners of her vision. You're just as much my hero as I am yours. Izuku responded. Ochako chuckled. You're so cheesy, Deku. She mumbled, pulling away from the embrace and wiping her eyes. It's my job, he said, shrugging. Want to go watch the last match? Ochako nodded, and the two left the room together. Izuku and Ochako made it back to the stands, and were met with applause from their classmates. Thanks everyone, Ochako said enthusiastically, giving a huge thumbs up. Izuku, dude. That was sick, Kirishima said from his seat next to Mina. Ochako remembered what Izuku had said about seeing him and Mina kissing in the post-match room earlier. Yeah, the way you took both of them on. Mina exclaimed. Izuku scratched the back of his neck nervously. Yeah, that actually kind of hurt. The only time I've pushed myself that far before was. Izuku trailed off. He wasn't allowed to talk about the overhaul raid. Never mind. Just know that that hurts. It's the furthest I can push myself without actually damaging my body, and I can only go for a short period of time. 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 He said. Their classmates eyed him awkwardly, but shrugged it off. That was so fast. My eyes couldn't even keep up. Sato said, nodding. I agree. Quite impressive. Quote dot. Tokiyami said in his usual quiet voice. You did amazing too, Todoroki and Tokiyami. Ochako exclaimed. The way you used Dark Shadow's strength of being in the dark. That was actually Todoroki's idea. Tokiyami said. Todoroki opted to remain quiet. Regardless, Ochako was cut off by Present Mike calling out the next set of contestants. On one side, Iida and Ojiro walked onto the field together. On the other side, Bakugo was walking out onto the field, leaving his teammate in the dust. He had a look of pure anger on his face. That's Bakugo for you. Hiroshima shook his head. It's just like him to go all lone wolf like that. Zero walked a few paces behind Bakugo, trying to catch up. Contestants ready. Present Mike called out to the audience. I feel bad for Zero. Bakugo isn't really one to work together with anyone unless he absolutely has to. Momo said. There was a murmur of agreement. Bakugo is going to run straight at Iida and Ojiro, trying to end the match quick. Izuku said. Ochako looked at him. He had his notebook out. Bakugo's page opened up. Start. Present Mike called out. True to Izuku's prediction, as soon as the match started, Bakugo broke into a dead sprint towards Ojiro. Then he's going to lead with a strong right-hand punch. Izuku muttered. Ochako watched as Bakugo did just that, lunging with his right arm at Ojiro's face. Then, as if he were expecting it the entire time, Ojiro took a step straight towards Bakugo. The martial artist grabbed Bakugo under the arm, before taking a step back and throwing him over his shoulder towards the boundary. You were too predictable, Kachan. Izuku shook his head. Just before Bakugo reached the ground out of bounds, however, tape wrapped around him, yanking him back to his starting side. Zero gave Bakugo a smile, and was met with a scowl. Looks like Zero at least had a backup plan in case things went south. Ochako said, if Iida and Ojiro are smart, they'll close the distance. Distance. Izuku said. Once again on cue, Ojiro and Iida broke into a sprint at the enemy team. You should stop that. It's kinda weird that you can predict every move. Ochako said softly, so Izuku was the only one that could hear. Izuku blushed, but shut his mouth, nodding in thanks. Ojiro and Iida ran at Bakugo and Zero, but as soon as the duo got in close, Bakugo let off an explosion, sending them reeling back. Back. They tried again, just to be blown back. Ochako could see Bakugo yelling down on the field, but couldn't hear what he was saying. Ojiro and Iida stood, just staring down Zero and Iida, neither team making a move. It was just like what happened in Todoroki and Tokiyami's match. I see what they're doing. Izuku said. Sorry, but I have to say this. There was a little laugh from the group. Can't keep it to yourself for too long, Midoriya. What is it? Hiroshima teased. Look at Bakugo. He said simply. Ochako focused down on the field. At first she didn't notice it, but after closer inspection Ochako saw it. he's yelling. She said. Izuku nodded. Kachan is really impatient. Ojiro and Iida know that it's only a matter of time before Bakugo gets annoyed again and goes on the offensive. Then they're at an advantage. He said. Ochako watched as Bakugo got more and more angry, waving his arms around. Finally, something broke and Bakugo launched himself at his enemy with blasts from his hands. Zero threw up his hands in exasperation before following. Bakugo was about to meet Ojiro, just like before, but at the last moment, he launched himself over the other student, before blasting him in the back with an explosion. Explosion. Ojiro staggered, but wasn't done getting hit yet. Bakugo blasted himself towards the blonde, catching his face in his hand, before unleashing a close-range blast. Ojiro staggered away, wavering. Just at that moment, Iida arrived, engine-boosted kick catching Bakugo in the stomach. Bakugo sailed a few feet into the air. Iida jumped up, bringing his leg around, hitting Bakugo square in the back, launching him into the ground. Yay Iida! Ochako cheered her friend on, feeling ever so slightly guilty for playing favorites. Iida reached over and grabbed Bakugo by the collar, preparing to run him out of bounds. Just at that moment, Zero's tape attached itself to Iida's leg. Zero yanked Iida back, whipping him around in a circle like he was a lasso. Zero released the tape and sent Iida flying out of bounds. At that moment, Ojiro got up off the ground and started towards Zero. The martial artist engaged Zero, who was no match for Ojiro, whether or not he was injured. Zero caught a knee to the stomach and a kick to the face, where he fell over onto his knees. Ojiro whirled around, preparing to deal the final blow. Suddenly, the field erupted with orange light. The smoke cleared to reveal both Ojiro and Zero having been launched out of bounds into the nearest wall. The only one still standing in the ring was Bakugo, who stood, arm outstretched. That was the move he used at the sports festival against me. Ochako said, amazed. Amazed, he did that to his own teammate. She realized with a start. Kachan will do anything to win. Izuku stated it as if it were fact. It's his way. Izuku stood up, shutting his notebook. He didn't look angry or worried. Just disappointed. He walked from the stands while the rest of his friends stayed staring at the field below. Ochako followed him quickly. She caught up to Izuku walking in the staircase that led out of the stadium. Deku, are you okay? She asked tentatively. Izuku turned, and his posture relaxed when he saw Ochako. Why, yeah, just a little nervous, I guess. He said glumly. Are you worried about tomorrow? Ochako had her suspicions. You can read me like a book. He chuckled. I'm not exactly nervous as in I'm scared. I'm nervous as in it's a big match. Yeah, top four. She agreed. Not only that, Kachan and I have a history as you know. Izuku looked Ochako in the eyes as they walked. Yeah, I think that I can beat him tomorrow. For the first time. He said with confidence renewed. What makes you say that? Ochako inquired. Izuku gave her a big smile. Because I have you standing by me with you. I think we could topple the world. He said. Ochako's heart fluttered, and she barely kept in a squeak of joy. Instead, she grabbed his hand in hers and squeezed firmly. We will win tomorrow, she said, imitating Izuku's confidence. Together. Where stories live. Discover now.